A lot of Reaper users are recording, and I want to show you, just as I did on the video on how to make my main toolbar, what's the toolbar that I use for recording. There's a couple of tips that I have given on other videos, but I'm pretty sure you'll find this video interesting enough. And as usual, this is not like just how to arm a track and how to record, how to set record. I'm going to go over a whole workflow of some best practices that you might want to incorporate into your own workflow. This video also goes along really well with my last week's video on tips for any music production session. So straight from Mexico City, my name is Juanchis, and let's just jump into it. So you can see that I have two toolbars at site. I have my main toolbar docked up here, and this one on the left at the top of my tracks, right between this arrange bar, is the one that I usually scroll depending on what I'm doing. And I will keep on showing you on different videos all of my toolbars. So let's jump into this one, and I'll start also micro adjusting some stuff that I probably haven't taken enough time to set them up properly. My best suggestion on how to deal with building toolbars in Reaper is how to make yourself some sort of checklist of a series of steps that fit whatever you're doing. And so you can always run from left to right, and once you finish the toolbar, you're done with the job. Sometimes this sort of workflow where you're working cyclically between a different session in different steps, you might want to have some things right up there at site, but some shortcuts might not be useful at all. Just like splitting an item, copying an item, like some minor shortcuts are probably best to leave them on the keyboard. Some of these mouse that usually have some extra buttons, or you have some macro buttons on a separate keyboard, or you have something like my Stream Deck, where I usually always try to load some extra pages for very specific workflows. So first things first, whenever I start to record, I want to be able to check my buffer size, so I know that if the musician is going through the DAW, they won't have any sort of latency. So I will always have my buffer size at the top, and I changed the icon because I'm building my own icon collection. But the whole point is that you need some sort of image processing software. In my case, I use Affinity. It's super cheap. I highly suggest you try it out. And you just build this arrangement of 90 by 30 of height, and you just do the same icon 3 times, and you can adjust different characteristics. So whenever the mouse is hovering, it's the middle position. Whenever the button is clicked, it's the right position. And whenever the button is off, it's the left position. You want to export those, go into Options, Show Reaper Resource Path in Explorer Finder, go into Data, go into Toolbar Icons, and here I have all of the ones that I've loaded, and now they show up whenever you're changing the icons. So yeah, first I want to always be sure that the buffer size is right in time and it's short enough. For that one, I'm using from the RIA pack the set block buffer size. Anything that I name that you will need to download from the RIA pack will be also named in the description as a list. So you right click this, you install it, and now you can add it. Remember that building a custom toolbar only requires you to open the action list, also with the custom toolbar menu open, and then you can search for buffer size. And you could even have different buttons for it, but I think that's too slow. So I'd rather have this one where it opens up a small menu. And here I have this small list that it's super fast for me to change from one to another, from whatever buffer size you're using. I could also open it with a shortcut, but I'd rather have it just up there. I haven't used that shortcut in a while, so yeah, let's delete that. And honestly, this is the way you will eventually end up working, because you will always end up adjusting stuff. Try it out for a whole month or maybe 2 months, and then keep on adjusting. Then I usually want to check or want to move around the color of my picks. So even though I have those two up top here, I'm thinking of a scenario where maybe I need to have a second toolbar down here, and I'd rather have my recording toolbar up top. In this case, you can see that my buffer size and my pick display are both showing up on my main toolbar and on my recording toolbar. But sometimes I'm thinking ahead of myself where I might have a scenario where I need my long recording toolbar up there and I need a really small editing toolbar down here, right? Like that's something that could happen eventually. So I prefer not to have like such a limited toolbar or having to switch back and forth many times. I'll just set this blank so we can concentrate on only one toolbar at site. And this action on the action list shows up as toggle spectral peaks. If you forget when you're building toolbars which action is set up on the button itself, you can just right click it and it will say action peaks, toggle spectral peaks. That way it's just going to switch between grayed out or colors. Sometimes you need one, sometimes you need the other. And it's good to have both of them at the click of a button. Then something else that I'm usually using is this solo in front. That's the common name from the SSL consoles, where I have the options solo in front action. And what this does is, let me play for a moment. This is a drum recording that I did long ago. And what the solo in front does is that it's going to lower the level of the rest of the audio that's playing back from Reaper. So you don't lose completely focus of what's going on in context versus this. Like that's the whole idea. And usually when I use the solo button, most of the times I end up using the solo in front button. And that's useful to have like just at sight also because that way whenever it's blurry and darkened out, I'm sure that it's off and sometimes I want to be able to see that before I start clicking and figuring out if it's on or off before actually doing it. So the next option that could be really useful for recording, and this one sounds, and this is like way before thinking of opening a track. As you can see, it's a whole workflow of stuff that you have to do before doing that, right? Next, I'm going to make a small separator. You have to click the one under where you want to make the separator. So I'm going to click down here. I'm going to create a separator. So that's going to push it down. And I'm using the separators as a way of splitting the sort of actions that I have to do in a specific order. The next step is that I have my session more or less and I want to keep this ripple editing mode as a way of always knowing if I have my ripple edits on. In case you don't know what that is, if my ripple editing is on, it has three different states. It has a ripple edit per track, a ripple edit for all tracks, or completely off. Trying to keep as short as possible this video, what ripple edit does is that whenever you delete something, everything in the same track will fall back to the closest near item, or in case you have a ripple edit for all of the tracks, whenever you delete something, all of the tracks will get affected by that specific time. I want to have that at sight because I don't want to be editing with that on. It's a way of me knowing, just as the solo in front, that I don't want that on. I will hit apply on the customize toolbar and now it's going to adjust it a little bit. So now I have my buffer size, my peak display, my solo in front, and my ripple edit. Those are my most basic. Oh, and since we're building the toolbar real time, I want to finally adjust this that has been making me crazy for a while now. The locking option. You will see the preview of how your toolbar is filling up down here. And I could also make it super wide, but in the means of keeping it like concentrated in only one part of the screen, I will keep it as a small square down here. I want to keep this button of the lock also at sight, because that way I will always know if my prevent moving items is on or off, so I cannot misplace something in time and I can just drag it up and down, because that's the movement that you use the most whenever you're recording. If I want to unlock it, I'll just hit L on my keyboard and I'll unlock it and I can lock it again. Since those buttons are something that I just want to be able to see and know where I'm at when I open the session, I might as well drag toggle snapping and stop playback at loop. Toggle snapping, what does is it simply lets you pull stuff together and make them snap to each other, like they pull each other into place whenever it's on. But if it's off, see, like it's not moving or dragging me into it. And if you want to change the range of how can you snap these items together, you can just right click the item and it will open up the snap and grid settings, where usually I don't have to go here to change my grid settings. But if you want to change the distance of how far will it take for something to snap, in my case I have it at 10 pixels, and what do you want to snap to each other? Like that's a really important thing to also have in mind. And here, again, the only thing that I'm actually doing is knowing that this is on, because sometimes you turn stuff off and you don't know why something is working or not working. And the stop playback at loop, I want it to be at side because sometimes you're recording and whenever you want to check something, you might just want to drag from the bottom edge of a MIDI item to select time. You can change that on the mouse modifiers under preferences. And you just want to check something from here to there. I'll hit play and it stops because my loop is off. If I have this off, then it will continue playing all along, right? Sometimes you want to have this on, sometimes you want to have this off, and it's great also to think about the mouse placement on the screen. It's stuff that you have to reach constantly. If you place them really far away, it's going to be this huge movement every single time. I think you're getting the idea of what kind of video is this. So open up any text edit app or notes app that you use the most, and like let's keep on diving into this. All of my videos are more or less like this, and drop a like down below if you're liking this video. Next, I want to think about how I'm going to set up my tracks and what the recording modes are and how to route them, because that's something that I usually want to do. And I want to be able to load my track templates for recording. Remember that you can do track templates in Reaper. So I'm going to delete everything right here. And usually what you would do is you would hit right click on the track control panel, insert track from template. And I don't know why OBS did this from the last update and I hate it, sorry for that. And I have made folders where I have my recording track templates. You can adjust this and rename this again using the Show Reaper Resource Path in Finder. And if you go into track templates, you will see that I have all of the folders right here, and those have every single one of them different names. So for example, if I want to have these templates in a closer part of faster way in Reaper, I could build another custom toolbar, because you can see that we have a lot of custom actions right here where you can load track template 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, blah, 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 and you can leave small notes, but it's going to be messy as you start growing, because you might have some track templates for return channels or auxiliary tracks, however you want to call them, or you might want to have some for virtual instruments and so on and so on. So what I'm going to do is, instead of having to click every single time there, I will add a new button down here where I'm going to look for this action, insert track from template. And instead of importing these ones or having to use a prompt for slot and having to remember on the top of my head which number is every single one of them, I'm going to get this new window. Instead of having to right click and build all of or load from that menu the track templates, I'm going to add this action that's called Open Close Resources Window Track Templates. So whenever I run this, you might have something empty or you might have some sort of list right here. Mine is empty because I emptied it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click right here. I'm going to autofill and I'm going to set the autofill directory, or I can just hit autofill and it's going to load every single of my track templates that I have on my Finder or on my hard drive. And now everything is right there. My only issue with this is that it's not showing me some sort of folder or containment order. What I could do is just left click right here and it's going to order them by path, and then I can see my dynamic track templates, my effects, my instruments, my recording, and I can see all of them right here. Now I could just add my recording for this one by double clicking. I have that set down here down on the left, where double click will import the tracks, and maybe that's the one that I want to use. I will close this window and now I have all of these tracks, and if I arm them, now you can see that I have a couple of 24 inputs that I used to have to do whenever I was working with a very specific console, and I just needed to have everything routed. And since the input list more or less was the same in every single time, I could just load this really fast, or whatever works best for you. So I'm going to add this one to my custom toolbar. You will see that you still have this run button right here that's going to make that action happen. So you have to hit the menu editor button, and now this one changes to select, and you have to put your mouse or select where you want to have it. So I'm going to select the action, and now this button right here on the action list changes to select. And now whenever I select it, it's going to appear right here. You can rename it so it's not as large. I suggest you invest time of this. If you're already watching this video, you should probably do it as you build your own toolbar or copy this one. Remember that it's going to show really small on your screen. So make some sort of small visual cues of what is what. And I'm going to use the text double width because that's going to give me a lot more space on my screen. And now I can see T template, right? Whenever I hit this, I can see all of my track templates available. And whenever I'm done, I can just close this one. And I think that's a little bit faster instead of having to right click and go here. Whatever works for you. Here, I will change something in the order of my toolbar. I had set it up like that before, but I want to be able to load the track template, or if in case I have one for that specific situation, but then I want to be able to route my channels. So I will just select these ones that I have already down here in 1, in 2, 3, 4, 5 by holding Shift. I will select all of this, the new separator, all of them, and I will just drag them up until I can see down below on the small icons that I'm right next to my track template. Oh, I went too far. I went too far. No. Okay, this is always hard to do. Take advantage of being able to resize your windows. For example, something like this, just because I'm recording, I have to do it differently. But I would usually do something like this, like make my screen really, really tall so I can actually handle and take advantage of the scroll as I'm moving stuff, so I don't have to hold it up and hope for the best. So now all of these belong to the same idea, building a track template and routing it properly. That action of the in1, 2 is a script called set selected track record input to mono 1, mono 2, mono 3, mono 4, all the way up to 8, or stereo 1 through 8. Those are the options that I have down here. Remember that the action list is your best friend. Just drop in a couple of keywords and it will show you what options you have for that specific action that you're thinking of. So I'm going to link and copy just the name of this one on the description of the video. And I probably want to add also this one, the record input to all MIDI, all channel, because sometimes you don't have that on, and that's also a headache. So I'm just going to have it here, probably after all of my audio ones, and I will change the name again. And now I have it up here on my screen. Like that's super easy to have just at the top of my fingers again. So you can start feeling the idea of all of it. Once I've done that, I will probably have something like this, where I can just arm one track. And as I have showed you, and I showed you in the previous video, you know my dragging method for recording. And I can just set up, in this case, I'm using my input 6 for this mic, so it's fine if that one is 5, because that's usually where I go into the preamp, and that's already routed. Like that's part of the important thing. You do this once, and then you just have to repeat the same steps one after the other. My input 5 on my 500 series is my ISA by Focusrite. My number 4 is my Camden, my number 6 is my Neve, and so forth. So I know exactly which one is this. If you're getting lost by doing this, you should probably invest also a little bit of time. On the preference menu, under audio, you can go into input channel name, edit names. But if I go into my claret, that's the one that I usually use for recording, I can double click this one and name that alias ISA. I can hit OK and do something like that. You can save that so you can load it whenever you need it. And of course, this is everything in the resources path of Reaper that I have opened 2 times in this video. So now you see that up here, I have on my input set ISA. And even though I don't have a number, I could also add it as an input, something like that. 5 ISA, I'll hit OK. And now I know this is my input 5 and it's an ISA preamp, right? So invest time in that as well. I will probably have some sort of reference audio that I will be using for the recording. And let's suppose this is, I don't know, the drums, the harmony, and whatever. I'm also taking advantage of another action that I have set up on my keyboard where I'm using track go to next track and track to go track on 2 different parts of my keyboard so I can move up and down between my tracks easier. And I can arm them and I can unarm them really, really fast. Once I have all of that set up, I want to be able to decide if I'm going to record takes or with lanes, and I have a video on that, so also link it in the description. So I'm going to also drag many of these closer to the center of my screen because I will probably end up using that a lot. Oh, I almost forgot this one. I want to have this action also at site, the meter prefader, the track prefader metering. This one is extremely important. Let me switch up to my 6. Let me switch to my 6 and I'm just going to click up here on the toolbar. And now you can see that my voice is actually going in there. The huge benefit of having that button up there is that just as I'm flowing on whatever my steps I have been doing, I have this small icon that says post or pre. And it's too small, like the icons are sort of small. You could change that, but that's not the point. If I lower the fader and the audio is still showing up on the meter, it's because you are metering the track pre-fader, right? And whenever you're recording, you want that. Because if I turn this the other way, this option has more to do with the recording mode of the track. So if I hit right click on the arm button, you can see that I have the record input audio or MIDI. And I could record input force mono, and I could have this one. And even though I have the pre-fader track metering and I hit the action, it's not changing anything. But if you're using something like input monitoring only, now you can see that that's not moving. And I haven't changed the routing at all, even though my input is still 6. Unless I bring up the fader. Let me bring you up close. I will bring up the fader and now you will see that the metering actually changes. If I switch this again, you will see that the level is moving even though I'm not monitoring that. That's because in the recording workflow, sometimes you just want to know if it's getting fed into the DAW or if it's not getting fed into the DAW. Not only that, you want to know that the balance that you're making while recording using the fader inside of Reaper, that fader position won't deceive you, tricking you into thinking that you're way too low because you see the meter moving very little. This is extremely, extremely important because that's one of the reasons of why people could get some distorted recordings. If you are not looking at pre-fader metering when you're recording, you won't know when you're coming in way too hard into the DAW or into your converters. So my best suggestion is to have this one on and always have it at sight on your recording toolbar. I will change this back and now it's just as I expected. Let's suppose for a moment that you are doing a recording. What would be easier to see or where do you see less of a margin of error when you're recording? I have these two couple of tracks where I only have a couple of media items that, as you can see, they are grouped into takes. So I can just hit T on my keyboard and I can switch between takes. And I can switch between all of them without having to do grouping of the items themselves. And I know they are grouped because I have this small icon right here, because I grouped them from my track grouping parameters, and this is a shortcut that I just have on my keyboard. That's why it's not living on my toolbar. And here I want to assign them to Media Eraser Edit Lead to group 1. That's fine. That's that one. I close it. And since now this has to do more with editing as you are recording, because you want to be able to switch between different versions of what you've been recording, you might want to have also this button up on your toolbar. Toggle all track grouping enabled. And this one also behaves as some sort of a toggle. Because if you see this small ribbon, what you will end up doing is editing all at once. So if I split here and maybe split here and I drag, I'm dragging all of them together because I'm looking at these ribbons. I'm going to undo everything. But if I disable the groups, again, I'm changing the name in a double white text icon. Or you could also, if you have some icons loaded or you want to go into the Stash of Reaper and download packs of icons, you can right click down here and look a lot of icons that are available, find one that suits you best. Down here are the ones that I've been adding. And maybe you want to add something that's related to link, and you will see that I have this icon right here. And it's exactly this action that I have already down below. And it's something that I don't really need to have so close, but you might want it. That's why I went like back and forth for a moment. Sorry if it felt like messy. The thing is that if you are recording and you're trying to decide how do you want to see the tracks as you're recording, you will probably end up in a scenario more or less like this, where you start recording. Let me arm this one, send it to 6, and I'm just going to make a really small loop down here. And let me hit record, and I'm going to start recording takes and takes and takes and takes. And whenever I'm stopping, I see all of the takes at the same time. My big issue with this way of working is that whenever you click, you're going to change by mistake the take that you have previously selected. In order to avoid that, what you would have to do is you'd have to lock to active take. So the mouse click will never change the selection of the text. So I'm going to lock it, and now whenever I click it, I don't see it anymore. For me, that's like messy. So what I want to do is that whenever I'm recording and I stop the recording, if I was like maybe looking for a phrase on a couple of bars, across a couple of bars, what I want to do is to be able to see only the take that I have outside. That way, I still know which one I'm looking at. I'm looking at take 6 out of 9, like it's right there. And I can still scroll between my takes by hitting T or Shift T going backwards. Or I can still do edits and take the best out of this and the best out of this and the best out of this and do a small comp using only the takes. That's one way of doing it. The issue, or maybe not an issue for some of you, is that if I'm using the show takes option, it applies to everything on the session. And this can get super messy. I will close this window for a moment, but we will come back to it. You can change that behavior on the preference menu as well. But whenever I go in closer, this might happen. And this is going to be absolutely horrible. If I start making my tracks bigger, you will see that I have all of my takes. And there's a point where you can actually see only one. But once you go past that, it's going to start showing you all of the takes. And that's super messy on the eyes. It's really hard to keep track of what's going on whenever you're zooming into something because you wanted to see this MIDI item. And if it becomes smaller, it's just a headache, right? The issue is that show takes works across all of your project. So what I would like to do is to be able to record as comps. So I'm going to hit this comp button right here. Let me open up my customized toolbar. And I'm going to bring this one up because that's the one that I want to click first right before recording. If I need it because for any reason I simply didn't have it on. And this action is track toggle comping. That way, whenever I'm recording again a really small section of whatever, and I'm just recording and recording and recording, eventually when I'm done, okay, I did way too many takes of that. I will have a lot of different lanes where I can choose from. And again, this is kind of messy on the eye. So what I usually want to do once I stop recording that is I want to be able to see only one of them, unless I'm working just on that track and I want to see 2 or 3 MIDI items at the same time. If not, what I want to do is to bring this action up top. That's toggle show play only one fixed item lane. You can see it's different from the show all takes when room available. So this one applies for comping lanes and this one applies for takes. So they are different ways of working. That way, even if I'm still on the edit version of the comping, and I know I'm on the version edit of comping because I see this yellow rectangle near my C1, that's my comp one, I know that I can still use my small pencil to comp, and whenever I'm done, I can double click it, and now I can go into one lane, and now I have that. And even so, I can still go up here, and if I want to go back to the edit mode, what I will end up doing is I double click right here, and you will see that whenever I move my mouse down at the bottom, I have these small arrows up and down where I can start scrolling and building new comps and bringing new stuff into the comp. I will always have a reference of the audio file that I used, and all of these edits, let me go back into showing all of them, all of these edits will always end up showing up reflected whenever you go into showing all of them. So I much rather record into one single track where I can see all of this. And probably the best way of doing it, because we can still do it better, that's the whole point of trying to work in Reaper, is that you could build one custom action in the action list where you set up first track toggle comping and then one lane. So whenever you hit one button on the custom toolbar, it's going to immediately do those 2 steps in one. Or maybe you want to hit 2 buttons because sometimes you don't need to also bring the track into comping mode because it's already comping. Again, in Reaper, you have to start finding your workflow or the way you like things to flow on one specific project. Let me talk a little bit more about the other buttons that I have right here in the show takes, because in these show takes, what will probably end up happening is that maybe sometimes you will have one empty take for whatever reason. So let me split across time selection these 4 takes that I'm seeing in one single track, and remember that I can switch between all of them or only one. But sometimes you just want to clean up these ones instead of having to select it and Shift plus Delete. So sometimes you will end up with something crazy like this, like it really doesn't matter. And whenever you're trying to clean up the takes that are actually empty because you had some false starts or something like that, you can just hit this action that's called remove empty takes items among selected items. It's also in the description as all of them. And if you're taking advantage of this video by now, you might want to go into my Buy Me a Coffee section. You might want to consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell, because I'm trying to show a different workflow on how to start stacking different skills and stuff when you're working inside of a studio or trying to build your own studio or trying to improve your own skills, or like it's meant to be useful, and I hope it's being useful. So once I click these empty takes, you will see that it's going to clean the takes that actually contain no sound whatsoever. So you might end with something like this, and if there's some sound, as you can see, minus 100 something, it won't delete them, so you might want to delete those by hand. But that's really fast. If you're working with takes, you might want to have that also up there. I want to have it because sometimes I'm working with takes, sometimes I'm working with lanes. Not only that, I want to be able to jump from one to the other. So that's why I have the next action of explode takes on selected tracks to fix lanes and add comp area from active takes. That actually lets me do, for example, if I have been building some sort of small comp between my takes, I can just hit that button and move that into the lane version of it, and it's going to start on the edit mode. I can just disable it and show one lane, and now I'm good to go. Okay, we're getting really close to the end of the toolbar. I promise we're getting super close to the end of the toolbar. Next, there's something that you might want to be able to turn on and off accordingly if you want to start switching between the counting of the metronome or not. Here I have this small metronome section, because this is something that I'm also usually constantly like hitting on and off. And I could probably build some sort of or assign some shortcut on my keyboard for that, but I have enough shortcuts on my head, so probably it's best to have it up there. So I can just turn on the counting toggle, and if I check the metronome settings, you will see that the counting before recording, I turn it off, and the counting before recording is off. If I turn it on, it's on. So I don't have to go into that menu and turn it on. I can just know it's on or it's off. Probably for space saving, all of these are small considerations that I'm constantly using. I'd rather change the name of this one into counting, like just that, because it's right next to my metronome. It will probably be something related to it. And if it's always on the same spot, I'm never going to forget it. Then my metronome settings menu, and then here is only another icon that I did for options, toggle metronome on or off. Like that's a difference. So even though this says metronome settings, it means that it's either on or off, and I can switch it on from my keyboard. And that's the one that I probably would use from my keyboard, and I just have it on my M. Any other details like changing the patterns or changing the sound or changing any other thing, I could do it from here. Or I could also suggest you to build a track template where you have some sort of clavi or sound that you want. That's a click track, so you can route it separately easier, and you can do a ton of things to it, like doubling the time really fast, or using the ideas that I use on the Ableton arranging techniques used in Reaper. There are like a ton of crossovers where you can start building these sort of ideas. Now I have the track group enabled and disabled that we had a while ago. I don't need that one so close to the center of my screen. That's why I don't have it up there. And almost at the very, very end of my toolbar, I have 3 more small icons where I'm rendering mono, rendering stereo, or capturing MIDI. Those 3, I don't use them probably as much. Maybe. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I want to add one more here. I showed on last week's video, that's in the description, the production tips for anyone, the freeze stereo action that I built. So sometimes you have your own big production session and you just want to freeze a channel, and instead of having to right click and going into that option, even though I have it right there, you might just want to click the track and go here and select the freeze track stereo. I will definitely change the icon of this into yes, this small snowflake works great. I will apply it. And now whenever I freeze this track, for example, the only issue is that if I'm thinking of clicking always on the control panel, even though I have right here the option of my freeze with icon, it's really far from the button itself. So I might want to select it always from the mixer. Or remember that if you're dealing with a lot of tracks, you can select the track from any point. You don't have to go up all the way to the left. So I can just select it from here and I can hit render, freeze in this case, and it's going to change it. And now it's loaded with a small icon that this track has been frozen. These other actions, the only thing that are doing is that they are rendering stereo or they are rendering mono. In the case of this first group version, what I have is that I have some pannings here. Oh, I hate that. I hate that. Let me change. There we go. I can select this track, this folder, because it contains a lot of tracks. It's a folder, and I can just render stereo. And now it's muted, and I don't have anything to worry about. And the effects that I might have set up right here, for example, the comp diode and the smart comps, and I can just render stereo. It's going to take a little bit longer. So even if I have a couple of effects right on the group, and I'm going to duplicate this group, and I'm going to freeze one and render the other, you can see that the render one mutes, doesn't bypass the effects. You would have to do that by hand by clicking here, or in my case, I have a shortcut on my keyboard. And the freeze one, what does is that it creates the audio, it removes the plugins, and whenever you freeze a track, what it will end up doing is that it will lock the MIDI item, so you cannot mess with it. I'm going to unlock it for a second and mute it. So whenever I hit play, I want to check if those are going through. And as you can see, they are not playing, so that's not going through. It's super strange as a visual reference. So in case you get worried, like just leave it unmuted, mute the tracks that you just froze. And also the other thing that always gets on my head a little bit is that I can see the waveform. That like this usually means that it's going to have audio going through, but it's not. So it's a little bit strange. Because if I unfreeze the track, you will see that the main difference is that this blue icon on the tracks, that means that the track is being sent to the folder that contains it, and this one is being sent to the master track out. Whenever I freeze it, see that that assignment is going to be removed. So I'm going to freeze it with my icon, and the parent send has been disabled, but I still have this waveform up here that it's super strange to see, because if I remove the items, the waveform goes away, and this is like strange on the eyes. Like that's all. Like it's only strange on the eyes, because even though it's not being sent to the parent, if I unsend to the parent one track only, for example this, it's not getting visually removed. So I think that it's still going to show up there some way or the other. The waveform only is disabled whenever you have the muted source itself, not the routing of the signal chain. And that's also a little bit strange. I don't want you getting lost with something like that. So it's good for you to know that that happens. So you could freeze the track and it's going to remove the plugins and you have that applied. But my own personal head, my own way of thinking usually prefers to mute all of the media items after I froze a track, just because I don't see that waveform. And I only have the media item up there showing up as a display that's actually going to get played. I'm going to micro adjust one last thing just because we are on this very specific topic. I'm going to change the custom freeze with icon and the capture MIDI, just because the capture MIDI is in case I'm actually playing something from my push or a MIDI keyboard or any MIDI source. I just want to be able to use this capture MIDI feature so that whenever you're just playing MIDI notes around and you don't have anything written down, and I'm just hitting keys down here, whenever I hit that capture MIDI, it's going to show up there. Crazy thing is that if I'm just playing around on the track and the track is receiving MIDI and I hit capture, it's going to show up as well. You don't have to be in the piano roll for that to happen or for that to work. And as you can see, it's going to be named retroactively recorded MIDI because it's something that Reaper is always listening and you don't have to worry too much about it. And just as Ableton Live does, even if you don't have your session playing, you can just hit MIDI notes and hit capture, and it's going to set them up. It's probably more like a step sequencer sort of thing. It's not necessarily like giving you the time into the session and other stuff like on Ableton Live, but It's useful. I would probably never use it on full stop. I will probably be playing and doing like blah, 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 and I like that. And then I have that specific MIDI up there. So there you have it. We built a recording custom toolbar. Those are the things that I usually use the most. I will probably combine that, as I said, with another toolbar of editing. But this is another beast on its own. So I won't make your head hurt more for today with more information. I know this has been a dense video, but if this has been of any use for you or someone that you know that's trying to get into Reaper and still doesn't have the basics on how to start working, share them my channel. I will start soon enough the Zoom study group on Reaper. So we will have weekly lessons on very specific topics, and we can start like working even like harder on your own workflow. And there are going to be study groups. If you want some sort of one-on-one session, you can also contact me down below. Like, leave me a contact and I will reach out to you, or you can reach me out on my social media. If you like this kind of video, I also have a buy me a coffee link down below. And yes, like, just check if you have subscribed already to my channel, hit that like, hit that notification button, and do all of those things that people on YouTube say. Straight from Mexico City, my name is Juanchis, and thanks for listening.